insight. Hey, everybody, Chicagoland Chats. We're back here on Monday. Today's the 13th, right, everybody? Yeah, April 13th, 2020. And as always, I'm joined by my, you were in what branch of the Army? Was that that was the Air Force, Butch? What
branch of the Army?
Right now,
away.
I'm doing whatever to poke you about the fact that you're sporting your Navy gear today.
That's right.
That's right. He is.
That's right.
Our resident naval what is it? Naval officer? Are you an officer?
A blue collar, enlisted all the way.
All right. Our seaman. Our seaman.
Airman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our airman.
Wow.
Zemar. Look, we're all over the place.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Butch Zemar.
Yourself.
Yeah, I'm Butch Zemar from Elite Benefits. I help small to mid-sized companies with their health insurance and worksite benefits.
It's a shame Butch and I don't enjoy one another. I'm Adam Serwinski with Sidebar Insurance Solutions. We're here to serve any of your home, auto, or business insurance problems. So, problems generally, but insurance needs as well. Today we are here and joined by the fabulous Lynette DeRose from Supporting Strategies. Lynette, why don't you introduce yourself and what you're specialized in and the things that you offer with so that people can better understand you as we have this conversation.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. I'm Lynette DeRose. I own Supporting Strategies Chicago Southland. We provide outsourced bookkeeping and controller level services for our business clients. So basically what that means is we do the books for our small to medium-sized business companies. We can do everything from the most basic day-to-day transactional bookkeeping up to controller level services. So we will help you invoice your clients. We will help you pay your bills. We'll reconcile bank statements, credit card statements, balance sheet accounts, because you do have a balance sheet, whether you think you do or not. Everybody has a balance sheet. It has to be reconciled. So that's kind of what we do. And thankfully, we're a virtual company. We always have been. And that's great for times like these. So.
That's awesome.
Very cool. So first off, given the current situation that everyone's in, obviously you mentioned the virtual portion that's probably been helpful, but talk about some of the hurdles and the tactics or the problems that your customers are facing given the current COVID and coronavirus lockdown.
Well, I think the first thing is that people who weren't set up to work remotely got a crash course in how do I work remotely, right? Thankfully, like I said, Supporting Strategies is a virtual company, but I have several clients who are service contractors. So they were out in the field visiting people's homes or businesses to provide different types of services. And so they've seen their revenues tank, right? I mean, we're not going anywhere. We're not servicing clients in their homes or their businesses anymore. So, and then like I have some attorney clients who, well, the courts are closed right now. So there's not, they're finding that they can't really work the way they had been working, or everything's kind of on hold. Real estate closings aren't happening. I mean, they are happening, but it's just a whole new world. Everybody is trying to, how do I make this work in a virtual way? And people are getting really creative, but so I'm helping my clients. The biggest thing I'm doing these days to help my clients is to apply for small business loans through either the PPP loan program or EDIL, which is, I don't know if you guys have already covered those topics here, but that's kind of what I've been doing these days.
So speaking of those loans, what are some documentation or some things that business owners or employers are going to need to verify or provide documentation of? From a high level perspective, every situation is going to probably be a little bit different, but maybe there are some quick bullet points of some of the documentation that's required.
Yeah, the biggest thing you need to be able to provide and prove is your average monthly payroll cost, because especially with the PPP loan, they're going to loan you 2.5 times 2.5 times the cost of your monthly payroll. So you had to be able to say what your average monthly payroll is. Then you had to be able to support it with your documents, like your tax filings, so that you can prove that you're not just, making it up. So the few clients that I've worked through that process with, it's a lot of really basic questions. but then you do have to provide the backup documentation about your payroll. How are you going to spend the money? Is it going to be rent, utilities, mortgage interest? They won't cover principal of your debts, but they will help you pay for the interest on your debts. So if you have your books in good order, it's going to be a really simple process. But if you don't, then it's going to be a little bit more painful.
So what type of strategies are you deploying for these clients of yours, or would you advise a new client coming to you in order to keep those items in line and make sure that they get the right credit or the right forgiveness ultimately on the loan, or even qualify?
Well, so the way that the loans are working is a lot of times the easiest way to do it is to get the loan through the bank that you've already been using. So if you're like a Chase customer, go to Chase. If you're a Huntington Bank customer, go to Huntington. Because you already have an established relationship with them. They can see your credit history because, you know, and some banks won't even do the loan if you haven't been. I've seen like you have to have been a client since like February 15th of 2020. So start with the bank you already have a relationship with, and then that'll make the process a lot easier. If you do need help, most small businesses use some sort of payroll service provider, whether it's ADP, Gusto, QuickBooks, and all of these companies are getting report packages built specifically for applying for these loans. So the nice thing is you can log into your payroll service provider and say, I need a report for the PPP loan, run the report, and you're going to have the numbers that you need. So that's been great, the way people have reacted so fast. And it's been such a fluid thing where, you know, for the week leading up to it getting approved, there was, I mean, hourly changes coming through, like, oh, you know, now this is different. Oh, now this is different. And it actually got overwhelming there for a while, because like at one point I had like 400 emails and I'm like, this is crazy. But anyway, got all sorted out. And so now the banks and the payroll service providers have really reacted quickly to get the information put together to help people apply for these loans. So
Yeah, it's kind of felt like the people are live tweeting into our inboxes what they're doing about COVID at this time, don't you think? Like,
yes,
it's like,
yes.
oh, by the way, I just did this. The question, I guess, so maybe another follow-up question is, you're kind of talking about the things beforehand, and to qualify, that's great. But I think too, there's also another part to it, right? You have to prove that a certain amount is allotted towards those expenses. You have to keep those things separate. What type of strategies are you recommending after this, you know, to prepare for the disbursement, as well as once they've received it, to keep in line with eligibility for forgiveness or eligibility for interest-free repayment?
So for forgiveness of the loan, they're requiring that 75% or more of the loan goes towards payroll. So you have to very well document how you spend the money, and having a good accounting system is the way to do it, because every month you're going to have that stuff categorized correctly in your QuickBooks or your Xero or whatever you're using. And then you're going to have the bank statements to back it up. And then you're also still going to have those tax filings. So I imagine on the other end, it's going to be a similar process when you apply for forgiveness. You're going to have to prove up using official documents like bank statements and tax documents like quarterly payroll filings to prove how you spent the money. And then that way it can be forgiven. And then the part that's not forgiven, I think the interest rate I saw most recently was less than 1% interest, and like it was a really long repayment time frame. I want to say 10 years, but I mean it depends on the amount. But yeah, so there's very generous repayment terms on the amounts that don't get forgiven. But the goal is to use 75% of that loan on payroll, because that's what they want. They want you to keep your employees on the payroll, because it has that trickle down effect to help the economy, right? So that's the idea behind it. And so if you can document that using your payroll tax records, they want to see that it hasn't changed from February and March to May and June. Like it's the same. And then that way you're going to get that forgiveness.
Just a quick question, then I'll let Butch jump in with a question I know he sure has loaded for you. But are there also requirements for a number of employees kept on payroll? I thought I had read somewhere that that was also a requirement. I just wanted to get an idea so we make sure we include all.
I do know that they ask you, like the loan application says, how many employees do you have currently? How many jobs will this loan create? And how many jobs will this loan save? And so if you start with 8 employees, you may say 0 jobs created, but you may save 8 jobs, or you may save only 6 jobs. But you kind of answer that up front. And then you're going to have to obviously prove that you did what you said you were going to do on the back end. But I don't know that to your point, I don't know that there's an actual requirement that you have to save this percentage or this many. I don't know about that, but I do know that they're going to ask. They do ask.
They probably don't even know how they're going to do it yet. They're probably going to wing it towards the back end because the rules kept changing on when things were rolling out. And then, of course, some of the money dried up on certain programs, and business owners are still trying to grab. And hopefully they'll be able to be able to do that. I know the biggest requirement obviously is payroll, and I didn't know about the how many jobs saved, because that's an expectation that's in the future that we don't know, and hopefully these businesses could pull through. But I guess going forward, assuming we get past this, businesses survived, everybody stays in business, everybody gets back employed, hopefully in the next couple of weeks or less. I doubt it, but hopefully things positive. But what are some things in case this happens again, not maybe to the same degree, but nobody was prepared for this. And so like from a bookkeeping standpoint, maybe you've seen some things that businesses are not really good at, but maybe there's some things they could change going forward on making their books better, more solid, and all of a sudden something comes up like this. It's more of call it one phone call to the bookkeeper, and maybe less than 12 hours later they got everything they need. So what are some things that you could point out regarding that?
I think the biggest thing, and this is really tough, but I mean, people just need to stay on top of their bookkeeping, number one, but they also need to build a little nest egg, which I know that's easier said than done. I'm a small business owner too, right? But if you can sock away any few $100s a month that you just aren't going to touch, you need a rainy day fund, because you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know how long this is going to last. I'm with you, but I mean, I hope in a couple of weeks we're starting to roll things back out again, and people are going to be able to sort of, kind of get back to real life, whatever that looks like. But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from all this is somehow you have to figure out how you can create a rainy day fund, because that's the biggest thing. Like if you take, for example, my property management client, everybody was like, well, we can't pay our rent. Well, we can't pay our rent. We can't pay our rent. Well, the property manager has to pay the mortgage. So if the tenants don't pay the rent, the property manager can't pay the mortgage. But none of the loans or government assistance was written for landlords, right? Like the government wrote the loans programs so that the tenants could pay their rent, so that the landlords could pay their mortgage. You know what I mean? Like, so to have a little bit of a rainy day fund where you can pay your rent and you can pay your employees, and then when the loan comes through, you're paying yourself back because you've covered those costs without having to wait. Who knows how long it's going to take? Some people may have to wait 2 or 3 more weeks to get the funding. And that's going to be 1 or 2 more payrolls that they have to somehow figure out how to cover until the loan comes through. So I think that's the biggest thing, is people have to figure out how to have a little cash in their savings account to help them.
And I would think a service like yours, bookkeeping, managing cash flows, giving them an understanding of where their overhead is monthly, what their nut needs to be, what their expected employee payrolls would be. Talk about the process that you offer with clients to kind of manage that and maybe build in those budget for those rainy day funds.
Right. So what we provide what we call audit ready financial statements on a monthly basis. So we document everything, we tie everything out, and we produce financial statements for our clients, and then we can go through those statements with our clients every month and show them areas where, this is trending in the wrong direction, or this is something that you could maybe do based on these items on your income statement or on your balance sheet. And we can kind of give them guidance on ways to save money, so that they don't end up in a situation like this again, right? Like, but everything we do, we summarize it and we give it in a reporting package to our clients, and then we can take that next step, have the meeting with the client and say, this is what we're seeing, these are the trends we're seeing, and then we can kind of go from there.
Have you seen any of your clients revisiting any of their overhead numbers or revisiting any of their operating plans because of this? Maybe they become more comfortable with people working from home. Maybe they become more comfortable with taking on expenses for VoIPs or server spaces as opposed to having everyone in an office or having everyone doing certain jobs. Have you seen that yet, or are we still waiting for that kind of fallout in the meantime?
I think we're going to see that more when people start going back to work. Because I think working from home is great, but like we were talking about before we came on here, it's frustrating too, right? Like, there's so many distractions at home. And so maybe people will determine that, hey, I only need to be in the office 2 days a week and I can work from home 3 days a week. Or maybe employers will say, hey, I could downsize my office space if I let so many people work from home so many days a week. Like, I don't know. I think that's kind of yet to be determined, once we start coming out of this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know from an HR perspective, there was more and more companies that were doing the remote status as a morale and employment opportunity to work for the company. And now it's going to be more of the status quo. I do think it's going to be more so, but the downside is going to be the commercial properties and the renters, because I think they're going to be a little bit less of those. But it's tough to tell at this point. We're still in the middle of it, but hopefully they can pull through. Well,
one big difference also will be that hopefully the kids will be in school. Like, after this is all over and the kids go back to school, when you're working at home and the kids are at school, that's a lot easier scenario to navigate than, e-learning with the kids while you're trying to work at home, while you're trying to keep everybody happy who's been quarantined for 3 weeks in the house, right? So I think it'll get easier. That's
the hope, right?
Yeah,
That's my optimistic
outlook.
I like the silver lining
system.
Let me ask you this, and I know I didn't ask you this before we started, even though we were talking on the topic a little bit. What strategy do you employ to kind of either bring yourself back from that frustrated place or that center? Do you have one? I mean, I'm going to share mine after you go. But do you have like something that, just as a professional who's working, I know your husband works as well, right? So you guys are both working. You got kids, including 3 one who's a musician, right?
Yep, I do.
There's a lot of noise.
There's a lot.
What do you think? What would your just informal person-to-person advice recommendation be? Is like, this is how I can get recentered.
This is the two things. These are the two things I'm living and dying by. I've kept my routine, so I still get up in the morning, do all the same things I've been doing. Like, I have a morning routine and I've kept it. I do some reading and stuff like that in the mornings, and I still get up, I still do that. I get ready for the day. I do my hair and makeup. Like, I don't, like, as tempting it, I am wearing sweatpants. I will admit that. But
I do my makeup too.
Yeah. And then, like, my husband and I have been walking every day. Like I'm looking outside today with the wind. We're gonna walk. It's gonna be cold, but there is something about working out every day. Just clears your mind, get the fresh air, get out of the house. It feels like you're getting out somewhere. And so those are the two things I've been trying to do to stay sane.
Yeah. I'll throw out there, I use the Calm app. Just need to sit for like a good 3, 4, 5 minutes. They even have it, they can talk you through the meditation or something. But if I'm really close to that hot button, I just go hide in a corner with the Calm app for a little bit. And it's free to get. You can pay for the premium, but I just use the free stuff. So
yeah, that's a good one.
That works too. I can't wait to start doing the long runs.
I've never been a big meditation guy. Sorry, Butch. I didn't mean to step on you.
You never been? And did you start when this whole quarantine started?
I've tried it intermittently, and then this quarantine started. It became a necessity because it's when coffee and alcohol wasn't cutting it, right? So,
yeah.
I just worry for the future of America. We have a bunch of kids that are going to be raised by day drinking homeschoolers. So I don't know. what is going to happen for these kids?
So
Right.
on another note, and so there's a lot of small, even mid-sized companies that try to do their own bookkeeping in the house, and not they originally got in business because of an idea or a product, and here they are trying to do their own book. So
Right.
maybe what are maybe a couple ideas or things that businesses should look for when they should start outsourcing, and what's a simple step or two where they may not be able to or have to give up everything, but maybe they're giving up a portion of it and start easing that transition to get it off their desk.
When the thing that I start seeing small business owners do is just like they get so busy running their business that the bookkeeping falls further and further down on the priority list, and so all of a sudden you're 2 or 3 months behind, and then you have no visibility on your cash flow. You don't know what your revenues are doing. You're head down trying to run the business. And so that's a red flag for me. Like, okay, maybe you need to start getting some help. And it can be as simple as like a lot of companies will still do their own invoicing. They'll still bill their own clients because that's a real, control piece that they need to stay in control of. But then we can come in behind them, sort out the expenses, reconcile the accounts, run the reports, and just keep them on. A lot of it is like, hey, have you done this yet? Hey, I need this from you. And so we can just kind of be that friendly nudge to keep the bookkeeping on the forefront, but then we can come back behind and do the reconciliations, do the financial statements, the stuff that's, maybe a little bit further outside the business owner's comfort zone. And that can be a huge help for them, because then they can just maybe focus on 1 or 2 small things and we can clean up the rest. So it can be, you don't have to let it all go, right? It's your business, it's your money. I get it. But when you ignore it for 2 or 3 months, you're doing yourself and your business a real disservice. And so I think that we can find a balance between, we'll do this, you do that, we'll work together, and we'll get it done.
And maybe you could, if you could, and just to piggyback those questions, what would be the 3 questions that if a business owner can't answer on their own, they probably should look at getting a bookkeeper to come in and clean their house up? It's like 3 questions that you would ask a customer, or like for a self-assessment, like, can you answer these 3 things? And if the answer to those 3 things is no, or 2 or 1, whatever you feel comfortable with, hey, give Lynette a call, because that's the type of thing you should be able to handle as a business owner. Like Butch talked about, most business owners get into business because they're good at making a widget. They don't necessarily good at running their books.
Exactly.
So,
right. Well, I mean, it's April 13th. So does your tax preparer have what they need to do your 2019 tax return? If the answer is no, you need a bookkeeper, right?
if you wiped your brow because for the extension they gave you, right, on the first.
If you're like, yes.
Thank goodness for COVID, I got another 3 months.
Well, I'll tell you that my CPA friends who are doing the tax returns are like, that's the worst news ever, because we don't want to still be doing tax returns in July. We want to be done. We have other things we want to do in July, right? So that's one. I mean, if you're 2 or 3 months behind on your bookkeeping, it's time to get help, because it's only going to snowball and it's going to get worse. And then the other thing I would say is, if you don't know what your trends are in terms of revenues and expenses, then you need a bookkeeper, because that financial reporting, people don't give that the importance that it deserves, because it tells a story. Everybody's financial statements tell a story, and I can tell you what your financial statement story is by looking at your income statement and balance sheet. So.
I think it's definitely an important tool. I know when I work with self-employed small business owners, and some of them may or may not qualify for exchange tax credits, but it's amazing where they're like, well, I don't know what my income is going to be, or they don't understand the trends. And it's like, you got to know on a 30-day snapshot. We can't predict the future, but we have a pretty good idea based on the substance that's there. But and the reality is, I know some small businesses don't want that extra expense, especially now. But I could vouch for past experiences, once you get used to outsourcing it, it's almost like you never want to go back. Like, who wants to do that entry and verification when you got other things to do? And so, especially when that product or whatever you got in business for, you're trying to do it. It's almost like I always bring up the doctor's office. The doctor's office, the doctor is not doing the billing or the record keeping or the appointment scheduling, because that's not why they're there.
Right.
And so bookkeeping is just part of that.
Right. And you have to value your own time, and you're the CEO of your company, right? And you just like what you said, your time is more valuable than that. There are people who we're better at it and we're faster at it. We're going to do a better job than you, and we're going to get it done in a shorter amount of time. And then we're going to have questions for you that you probably haven't thought of because you've been too buried in the details of what you've been trying to do. So.
Awesome, Lynette.
Fantastic.
Butch, you got anything else?
No, I think it's been great. You provided a lot of information for businesses going through the COVID virus, and a little bit of the bookkeeping side of the loans, and what we should do going forward, what businesses should be looking for. It was a good call.
Well,
thanks again, Lynette. Yeah,
Yep.
you definitely never disappoint. She's Lynette, before we let you go,
Yes.
why don't you give your contact information out so someone can reach out to you and get a little help on their bookkeeping?
Okay, sure. Well, my office phone number is 815-255-8370. You can find me on Facebook at Supporting Strategies Chicago Southland, or on LinkedIn, or you can email me at lderose@supportingstrategies.com. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Lynette, thanks again. Butch,
Thanks
always good to hang out, man.
Yeah,
hey, everybody,
absolutely.
Thanks again. We'll be back tomorrow with Brian Thompson, is it? What's it? Butch?
Brian McDonald.
Brian McDonald, I'm sorry.
On
Brian
Purpose
McDonald.
Growth.
Yeah, so he's going to help us grow our businesses, think about sales stuff during this difficult time, rethink the way maybe we're operating our businesses. And then later in the week, we're going to have some reviews on mortgage, and we're going to be in another restaurant on Friday with Burger 21, with Ed from Burger 21, talking to us about what they're doing. So really a packed week of really good stuff. So come on by every day at noon. We have these conversations. Come in with more questions. Everyone out there, if you find value in these, we'd love to let you drive the conversation a little bit. So thanks again, Lynette. Thanks, Butch. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you back here tomorrow at noon.
Bye, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.